Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever live edition of the Same Old Stripes podcast. 121 episodes in, we decided 122 needs to be live. And I don't think we could have a better first live guest than Joe Goodberry. Joe Goodberry has been on this show several times for numerous different reasons. We usually have something specific and fun to talk about with him. Today, we're going to do a full 7-round mock draft. We're not going to pick like every team. We'll just be picking the Bengals, but wanted to give you guys kind of like a look into some sliding door moments for the Bengals. I think this is kind of a good way to test that experience, but I got to introduce Joe a little bit and kind of give him some plugs about all the content stuff he's got going on. If you guys haven't checked it out, Joe has a premium Twitter, I think it's premium Twitter. That's what I'm going to call it. Subscription thing going on, whatever Elon wants to call it. I think we'll all just roll with that. But it includes a ton of really cool stuff. And honestly, it's been such a good resource to get me ready for the draft. I mean, the things you're coming up with, man, the resources you're pulling from are really awesome. So I just wanted to give you kudos for that. So how's your draft season going? How's life right now? I mean, I feel like I haven't talked to you in a while, but it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Willie. Everything's good. Life's good. Everything's rolling. Springtime's just now arriving for us here in Western New York. We had a couple 60-degree days, so we've been trying to get outside and do that stuff, but fully deep in trying to finish this draft spreadsheet that we put out every year, me and a few other guys, and it's going to be the biggest and deepest one we have yet, and I'm really excited. It really gives me a lot of energy to work and do this stuff and evaluate and punch in numbers and check data and crunch things and just keep going. It's just I'm full energy right now.
Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, I think all the Bengals fans out there really appreciate it. And your draft guide with everyone you kind of do it with every year is such an awesome resource. And it's awesome to hear that's coming soon. Obviously, everyone out there has probably gotten a taste of Dan Brugler's The Beast that came out this week. This is like the Bengals version of that. This is
it's the Bengal Beast.
A great resource for you to use as you're kind of getting ready for draft season. We're not going to bury the lead here too much. I want to kind of go ahead and get right into our Bengals mock draft. So I'm going to pull it up on my screen. Let's see if I can do this.
Yeah, we're doing it on the fly here because Willie just got a new computer.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I can do this the way I want to do this. Figure this out in just a second.
Yeah, because ideally you'd like to share it so we can both see it.
Yes.
And if not, then you'll have to walk me through it and talk me through the scenarios.
You know what? I think I have an idea. I'm going to have to fly by the seat of my pants. We're going to do a Google slideshow. I'm going to copy and paste the screenshot from PFF or whatever we got on the board. We might have to do some scrolling. You can ask me questions about different guys that are on the board. It won't be the best way we've ever done this, but hey, I should have tested the technology, but we're in for a ride here. The first ever live edition of the Same Old Stripes podcast could not be without hiccups. With that being said, I'm going to, on my end, go ahead and shuffle the PFF mock draft machine and get the board set for 28.
Great.
So, yep. I'm going to roll the dice here. All right.
I haven't done a PFF mock in a while, so it once it went premium, I kind of stayed back a little bit, even though I have a subscription. So it's been a while for me. It should be interesting. I don't know who's going to be at each spot, is what I'm saying by that.
I think you'll be surprised. Yeah, the board has regulated quite a bit since then. I feel like, over the last couple of weeks, especially when they took it private, it seemed like, I don't know. It seemed like the options were much more realistic.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Oh, yeah. So let me go ahead and put this first one on the slide. And it'll give you some time to think about these first few guys while I grab the other ones.
Okay. So what I'm hoping for then while you're doing this, I'll fill some air here. I'm hoping there are starters at need positions, prospects I like, right? That's obviously the general idea. You're hoping for a Darnell Wright. You're hoping for a, if you want to go running back, Bijan Robinson. You're hoping for an Emmanuel Forbes, as I'm seeing this right here, Kalijah Kancey, something like that. Guys that I've got rated very highly that I think would fit.
So you're kind of seeing your first options there. I'm going to add another slide of them here. I think that'll give us a pretty good sample. I mean, based on the guys you just mentioned, do you find this board a little underwhelming compared to some of the names you mentioned at the top? Because I think those are more of the popular names that you just mentioned across Bengals Twitter and across the board.
Yeah. Well, you remember you're hoping somebody from the mid-teens is there, right? That somebody fell. I mean, I think last year when we were leading into this last few weeks of the draft, it became solidified of like, all right, well, let's hope that Kyer Elam is still there, but he's probably going to go top 25. Let's hope Trent McDuffie, one of these corners, are still there. If not, maybe George Karlaftis is still there. We weren't really saying let's have this guy who was number 9 on our board, Daxton Hill, because he checked every single box, so he ended up grading really high for us. We weren't really saying that at this point. So there are a couple guys here that check every box that are going to grade super high on our board that I'm happy with. It just didn't be, it just ended up falling as being one of the drafts where a consensus top 15 guy is still there.
Right on. I think that's very interesting perspective from you. Another, sliding door kind of thing. I'm going to go ahead and show you the second slide of these. I think this is, let's see if it does it that way, or if I have to click it on the screen. How do we want to do this? Google Slides. Let's see. Oh man, I'm learning on the fly, aren't I? That's not what I want. I'm just going to Control Z this and do this and see if that pops up. No, why won't that do that? Huh. Well, I guess out of these guys, who would you want? Because this is
well, if it's the first page, it's easy choice for me here. Although I like every single player on this front page. I do like them all. I think the guy if you're drafting in the first round, I would like to spend on a premium position, a position that you can't get in free agency because they're just too expensive. Offensive tackle, wide receiver, corner, pass rusher. I'd like to go that route. And there's one guy here that's going to check every single box that I look for, whether that's having a good film grade, having the size you look for, having the athleticism, the production, and then can you back it up with what the consensus draft world thinks, and then like PFF grades and different data that we look at. And a guy that's going to end up top 6 or so on our board is Emmanuel Forbes. And I know he weighed a 166 at the combine, and he was 170 at his pro day. The Bengals met with him at the combine. They didn't go to his pro day, but they're bringing him in for a top 30 visit. They probably want to see if he's progressing in weight. If you can get me to 174, 175 in that range, you can make that pick with a young guy that's probably going to gain a few more pounds, and maybe he's skinny his whole career, like Drake Kirkpatrick at a 180 and some change. But it almost never affects him on tape. He's not afraid of contact, doesn't shy away from the run, doesn't shy away from hitting or tackling. He's got A+ ball skills. I think he has A+ IQ, and then you put in a 4.35 speed, high-end production in all facets of the game. I'm talking 6 pick sixes in his career. The guy gets his hand on balls, 20 passes defense, 14 interceptions, starter of the last 3 years. I would take Emmanuel Forbes and give it an A+. If the Bengals drafted that, and I'm sitting here grading on that night, I'd say it's an A+ pick because I think he's going to be a stud number 1 type corner in the NFL.
I think that's such an awesome pick for so many reasons. And I know that there is a contingency of people that get really upset when we talk about a first-round corner for the Bengals just because it seems like something they've taken a lot in recent years, or no, kind of in the Marvin era. And they've already they've got a picture set, with their corner with the Chidobe Awuzie signing and Cam Taylor-Britt, moving up in the draft to get him last year. So I understand that from the contingency, but I think all the things you just mentioned with Emmanuel Forbes, if you're just telling Lou Anarumo you're getting that player in his defense, obviously he doesn't have the exact traits the Bengals are looking for, which you mentioned, and I think are kind of obvious at this point. He's pretty light. He's going to be an outlier. I really like, and it's kind of funny I don't normally like comparisons in general, but I love the commentary saying he's like the Devontae Smith of corners in this draft or something.
I said that after the combine because there's some guys that you see, and the first time I ever heard this was Johnny Manziel as a prospect. Now, Manziel didn't work out. Remember, he was really skinny, but he was rocked up and he was cut, right? And they're like, he's just like crackhead strong. Like that's what they were comparing him to, like a boxer that's super light, like a lightweight boxer, featherweight boxer, but those guys are super strong. Devontae Smith was that way. And now I would compare Emmanuel Forbes to that way. Like, it really doesn't matter what their weight is. I can tell he's really strong.
Yeah, and I think that would be everything. And they've had multiple conversations with him. I mean, they probably have a pretty good idea about who he is in the NFL. And just kind of wrap up this conversation on Emmanuel Forbes, and specifically because he's a light prospect, and because I got to make a quick couple round 2 slides for us. But I mean, how much do you make of these NFL teams and the data they have today with the ability to, use technology to find out the body composition of these guys and the muscles they're able to have? I mean, how much does that contribute to these conversations, especially when we're talking about the draft and not knowing what these guys are going to look like as pros?
Yeah, so it goes in cycles. As teams spread out more, everyone gets lighter. And then a lot of teams will say, I want to go heavier, and those teams look for those. So it's always a situation where you're trying to be ahead of the curve if you can be. I noticed this a few years ago. Pass rushers, it was the Carl Lawson draft. Carl Lawson, Trey Hendrickson, Jordan Willis, Terrell Basham, all these guys that went in this class. If you go look it up, I want to say that was 2017 or whatever it was. You ended up getting shorter, tighter guys, like their 3 cones all fell off that year, but they were power rushers for only being 260. And it was a really weird year for that draft class. I remember that for the first time I was thinking, like, man, these pass rushers are getting shorter. They're starting to mimic the Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney era of 10 years before that. It takes time for these guys for people to say, hey, yeah, you can play defensive end. You don't have to be 6'6". And then they filter through high school and then college and then finally make it to the pros. We started to see smaller offensive tackles also, guys that weren't always 6'7", but 6'5", 6'4". It's funny. You see guys weigh in now, and if you use RAS or anything like that, there'll be a 6'4.5" offensive tackle, and he'll be like a 45th percentile in height. People are like, how is 6'4.5" small? Well, it's because they used to all be super tall at tackle, and it's not the case anymore. And I think the same thing has happened at wide receiver. We started to see smaller gadget receivers on almost every offense in the league. Bengals are excluded from that, although I would like them to draft one. I think we've seen corners now. I think there was 32 corners under 180 pounds that played more than 300 snaps in the last 15 years. And I want to say 9 of them were just in the past 3 years. The Patriots had 2 last year. I think Emmanuel Forbes, and I think we have 7 guys in this draft now that are under 184. So it's like a trend that's starting to come through more and more and more as receivers have gotten lighter, faster, quicker, and smaller. You need guys, not like a Patrick Peterson and Jalen Ramsey. Remember, those guys were big guys we thought could play safety. We're looking at now quicker, faster guys to cover.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, I hope we don't make anyone roll their eyes, but it's not your grandpa's NFL, all that kind of stuff. We're not going to go down that path. We're not doing that on Same Old Stripes today. I think I did find a better. I got these slides are working now. So
great.
Here's what we're going to have on the board for. Ooh, there we go. Here's the board. I think the 15 players or so that are kind of good options for the Bengals in round 3 based on PFF's rankings, all that kind of stuff. I don't think we're in on Tanner McKee. I don't think so. I'm going to jump through these and then we'll kind of work through them.
Okay.
Here's the second one.
Okay.
And then there's number 3.
Oh, man. I know who it is.
All right. So tell me your guy, and then I want to talk about some of the other options because I think there's a lot of intriguing stuff here.
There is. I was not excited by the first slide because we drafted Forbes in the first round, right? So, I'm like, okay, I like Stevenson. I like Garrett Williams, who is hurt, and I think he'll be a good player. So I'm like, I'm not taking Dell that high. Would I take Weipler or Tippmann? I'd probably take Tippmann because I think he could play multiple positions. And then I go to round 2, and I'm like, Hodges Tomlinson's a slot guy, I think. I'm not ready to pull that trigger in round 2. Herbig, same. He's kind of a tweener. I'm not going to pull the trigger there. Charbonnet, maybe, but I love this running back class, so I'm going to stay away. I've got Andre Carter-Moore as like a 3rd-round guy. Same with Ika. I'm not going to touch him there. Michael Wilson, I'm not going to touch him there either. I think that's too early. I'm not interested in taking a safety. Rashee Rice, maybe, but I'm not ready to get on that. I consider Tucker Kraft from this. I consider Carl Brooks from this. And then I saw Derek Hall. And for me, Derek Hall is also going to end up being a top 10 player on our board. He's very similar. He's going to sound exactly, so I'll cut it down on the process. Hall's going to check every single box you're looking for, plus being a captain, leader of that Auburn defense. He's a pass rusher that can play left end and right end, 300 snaps on the right side, 300 snaps on the left side. The Bengals don't really do that right now. I think they would like to be more multiple and switch it up a little bit more. I mean, Hendrickson only rushes from right end. Hubbard only rushes from left end. I think you would like to mix that up, even if Osai is splitting snaps or getting some of the snaps at right end and the pass rush situations or defensive tackle. I think with Hall, you could add some pass rush ability on the left side, which is where the Bengals really are weak on the pass rush on the defensive line. I think we could take a defensive tackle at some point. But Derek Hall, you're going to get a full 8-minute video of Bengals on the Brain at 8 o'clock of him. He's a guy that I think could be a sleeper for the 28th pick, but definitely at 60, I would be all for it. Again, like I said, A+ for Forbes. I would be A+ for me to take Derek Hall. He's a power rusher with the long arm move, what the Bengals typically like. He's got really long arms. He needs to develop a better pass rush plan, counter moves, things like that. But man, when he is on, he's a freak athlete with good production that just I think he makes this defensive line rotation full and better. I mean, you would have 4 defensive ends at that point. And I like Cam Sample. I think he would be a great fifth at that point. You could rotate as a run defender. But Derek Hall, I think at that point becomes one of your top 3 pass rushers on the team.
I think that's very interesting. Derek Hall is not a name I've thought a lot about, but it does seem like I think once you drop that video, Bengals fans are obviously going to be all over it. I think that there's a lot of Bengals fans that'd be interested in Carl Brooks in that spot. I think that just has to do with the fact that a lot of Bengals fans, for whatever reason, watch MAC football because their own, alumni play in that range. The only thing I think might be a little bit controversial for some Bengals fans, starting off defense when there seems to be a heavy lean from fans to, really be leaning into fixing some things on the offense. I mean, I think that tight end, off right tackle in particular, and then running back are obviously probably the 3 biggest positions fans are talking about. How do you think that sits with the fan base? I mean, I think you and me would be pretty fired up because the players the Bengals are getting are pretty damn good. But, I mean, could you see a little bit of bite back from the fans in that situation?
Of course. And I was asked just the other day on Twitter, someone said, hey, of the big need positions, which one do you think they could probably bypass because it doesn't fall where the draft lines up? Because that's the other part of it. That's if you can project how the draft is going to lay out and flow, which is hard to do, but you can in some sorts get there. And you line that up with their needs, you can say, okay, they'll probably pick a guy here. They'll probably get a corner in round 2. They'll kind of, whatever you want to do. I think right tackle could be the one they bypass because if you're not drafting a guy in the top 2 rounds, you're probably not getting a starter. And are you just going to waste a mid-round pick or a day 3 pick on a tackle for depth? Maybe, but at that point, it really doesn't matter. I could see that being one of the positions when you only have 7 picks. And then when you go to the other positions on the offense of tight end and running back, where are the best spots to take those positions? Rounds 2 through 4, 2 through 5. If we're still sitting here with picks in round 3, 4, and 5, you probably still feel pretty good that you can find a running back and tight end with the next 2 picks. So I just think this is a situation where you've got to pivot. And I would take Tucker Kraft, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have a problem with Tucker Kraft at 60 at all if the draft didn't play out and a Derek Hall wasn't there. We'd probably be having a conversation between Brooks and Kraft. Brooks, who can also kick inside and play defensive tackle as well and rush from the inside, which I think could be very valuable for them. But at the same time, for me, the fall off from Kraft to Brenton Strange or Zach Kuntz or Will Mallory, it's not worth it for me to make that pick. But the fall off from Hall to the next, and it's not even that I need a defensive end. It's just that I see such an opportunity to find a gem. And the other thing about defense, too, in the Bengals, they will draft for years in advance. So, yeah, the corner may not start right away, but he's going to be a starter in year 2. Same with Daxton Hill last year. Yeah, the DN may not start right away. They both will contribute. I feel like they've had injuries every year at corner. Your DNs will play all the way through the depth chart. But he will be a future starter. They need to eventually replace Chidobe Awuzie, eventually replace Von Bell, eventually replace DJ Reader and Trey Hendrickson. These guys aren't going to be on the roster probably after their deals are done in the next 2 years. You got to start drafting for those replacements now because you're going to pay Burrow, maybe even Higgins and Chase. And if you do, you got to cut a lot of that tier 2 and tier 3 fat off the roster and replace them with draft picks.
And I mean, that's going to be the reality for this team. And at some point, they will get a little bit of a breathing room when the salary cap starts to expand, but they're going to have to keep paying guys. That's going to be the nature of the beast with this one.
Yeah.
And, obviously pass rusher is an area where you never want to be light. So even if right now it's just another body to have for 2022 or 2023, excuse me, you're totally right. I mean, having those guys that can be starting level players at that position in the future, as you start to have these players come into later, years of their career, and you don't want to re-up those guys. I mean, they're not signing guys over 30 at this point, unless it's, not very much money.
1-year deals.
Yeah. I think that we can go ahead and jump to round 3 from here, but let's see if we can go offense now. Let's see what we can.
So we're hoping, running back and tight end. We'd really like to address it. And if there's an offensive tackle that we still like, because you can find, it's a low chance, but you can get a starting tackle in the 3rd round if he checks the boxes you need.
I will say I have seen this. I think that you'll be surprised how much of the offense, and this doesn't happen for every single one of these PFF mock drafts. This is just, again, an experiment for us. So here's your first slide of these. Some of the same names are coming back. Not surprised to see the safeties kind of sliding on PFF's board.
We got to avoid Zavala coming in and taking the job of left guard, huh?
What's wrong with you? How dare you say this on your show? No, but Jalen Zavala is a hell of a player, man. If that's the way they go, it's going to be hard to complain.
I know.
There's your second slide, your boy Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, I'm lower on Bigsby, but everything's telling me I'm wrong.
I know. I kind of love that for you, but it's just like you can't beat your own data, but the film doesn't show up for you.
Right. What am I supposed to do? Yep. He's a whole conversation, though.
Yeah. Bad offense.
So it's running back, but these are the best options for running back, huh?
Man, yeah, I'm going to go to slide 3, and I can grab some more running back names if you want, just to throw them out there.
Well, I will just wonder if I'm different than a lot of defense again.
Yeah. So your running backs, you have. So who do we have as our last running back? Sean Tucker was our last running back. I mean, it's pretty slim pickings. You're going to get Deuce Vaughn, Roshan Johnson, everyone's favorite running back. Actually, not at all. Zach Evans, Chase Brown, Keaton Mitchell. Those kind of guys you still got.
We may want to go another round on that. What's tight end look like?
We've got at tight end. Oh, it's still all the running backs. Oh, man. We got Davis Allen, Zach Kuntz, Josh Wiley, Payne Durham, and, your boy, everyone's boy, Will Mallory, who they use as a filler at the end of their draft.
Yeah, no Brenton Strange here. Do you want?
Let's see. They got Brenton Strange. They just got him ranked real low.
Yeah, okay. That helps plan it out then. I still feel good about both running back and tight end going into the next round. The running back I would take here is probably Kendre Miller.
Yeah.
I like him the most out of this group. And the data doesn't disagree. It's just that he wasn't able to test, so we didn't really get anything on that end. The other guy I would consider is Wanya Morris, who I think can end up being a starting right tackle in the NFL. I actually think that's a fine pick in the 3rd round and a fine roll of the dice. The other guy is Dwayne McBride at running back. Those are the 2 backs I would look at in this spot. I believe he's on your first page.
There we go.
From UAB. I mean, he's got power. He makes guys miss. Lower competition, but he runs through these guys. Consistent, elusive running back that can break off long runs for a power back. The problem is he's almost not used at all in the passing game. Like if you take him, you're kind of saying, all right, Mixon, we desperately need you to be on this roster because you're our best passing game back at that point. We don't really have another option, so Kendre Miller also has not been used enough, I think, in the passing game. He's a complete unknown in that facet. So it's tough. They're in a tough situation. Sean Tucker's dealing with injury. Otherwise, he probably would be a decent pick here. I think he's probably going to go 2 rounds even later than this, maybe into the 5th round for Tucker, even though if he was healthy, I think he'd be a fine pick. I'm leaning Wanya Morris here and saying he could end up being a starting tackle in the NFL and starting right tackle. He played right tackle. Anton Harrison was the left tackle there. I think his film is better than the data is going to point us. It's going to say 3rd, 4th round for Wanya Morris, and that's fine. We're at the end of round 3 here. I think the film looks better than that, and I think it's worth a shot to say he could be our future right tackle.
You know what? I really like Wanya Morris, so I'm into that. I think the thing with I feel like he's got a lot of injury history. Is that correct? Do you remember?
I don't have anything on my notes with that. That's jumping to memory.
Okay, good.
I could be wrong, but
Yeah, I don't know who I'm thinking. You know, all these things run together.
yeah, it starts to blur.
Yeah, Wanya Morris in this spot. I mean, you do a lot of research on these PFF grades and where these guys are picked. Where do you see round 3 tackle? I mean, does that pop up a lot when you're looking at these tackles and the PFF grades? I know there's, you can only make so much of PFF grades, but
Yeah.
at some point they are informative.
So for round 3, for what we're going to end up having for targets, because I think Matthew Bergeron goes in round 2, even though on tape I think he's more of a round 3 or round 4 guy out of Syracuse. He may even actually be a guard. But I've got Nick Saldiveri out of Old Dominion. If you want to go that route with a small school guy, I think he can end up being a starting right tackle in the NFL. He's probably still there. He actually comes out higher than Wanya Morris if you're interested in how we have it. But after that, Tyler Steen from Alabama, he could still be there. He could be a starting tackle, I believe, after some development. And the underrated guy, maybe it's more of a 4th or 5th round. Maybe that's the late one the Bengals go with. But John Ojukwu from Boise State could be there. And because I'm assuming Blake Freeland is already gone in this.
Yeah, Blake Freeland did go.
Okay. Round. Yeah, that's where I'm thinking he goes as well.
Cool. Looking at these guys, I think it's interesting to pass on running back here. And I think it's another study of this draft is just loaded with running backs. And I don't want to talk to you about running backs today because that's not what anyone wants to hear. We're not here to have that conversation again. But when you kind of look at the options, and we'll kind of do this experiment in the next round where I think you're going to end up feeling running back in this one. I have a feeling in my gut. But yeah, and it's also interesting to see all these defensive players here. But getting a tackle there, I do think that's pretty good value.
I assume Tyjae Spears is gone, right?
He's gone.
Right. I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the grouping I've got in the order I've got. I've got Bijan Robinson grading out as a top 5 player in this draft. I've got Jahmyr Gibbs as you can take him in the late 20s, and I'm fine with that value. And then I have Israel Abanikanda, Tank Bigsby, who, again, like I said, I don't love Bigsby, but he grades out as a 2nd-round pick with Abanikanda, Tyjae Spears, Chase Brown, and Zach Charbonnet. All in that range for if you take them in round 2 or early round 3, perfectly fine with that. After that, the next guy I have is Roschon Johnson. So, that's why looking at this list, I'm like, I don't, if you're saying I could probably get Roschon in the next round, I might wait and roll that dice because after him, I still feel fairly similar with Evan Hall, Chris Rodriguez, Kendre Miller, Zach Evans, Dwayne McBride. If any of those guys still end up being there, I feel like we're okay.
Yeah, and I think that's all pretty sharp from your perspective. I think one thing that is kind of funny to me is we're not even talking about round 2 running back, really. I feel like that was kind of an afterthought now that I'm kind of looking back at our conversation so far. It is kind of funny, again, to me, because I feel like when we talk about round 3 with the Bengals, it's always defensive line. So it wouldn't be surprising if in the action. We already went defensive line, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go there again. But
they could use a D tackle, but I just don't. I think Ojomo was still there, and he grades pretty high for us as well. I just don't think after going defense, because they like to alternate. They like to, even last year, they said, okay, BPA was Dax Hill. Even though that's a future need, we'll take him now. Round 2 and round 3, I remember posting what are the Bengals' biggest needs heading into the draft, and the top 2 that were that people voted on were corner and defensive tackle. So what did they go in round 2 and round 3? They traded up, got a corner, and then they took a defensive tackle in round 3 and Zach Carter. So I think now is when they were going to okay, attack some needs. We're probably playing a little bit too much BPA right here, unless you really see Wanya Morris as a desperate need.
And I think that they could probably piece it together at right tackle, and we would probably just be like, okay, we'll sell ourselves on it somehow. It's not the plan. I mean, if they're going to do Jonah Williams, which I have every reason to believe they're going to do Jonah Williams, not an insider weird thing or anything. That's just a feeling thing. They're not going to be afraid to do it if they can't find an extremely good deal.
Yeah, they'll just suit him up.
Yeah, and so we're good on that conversation. We have a right tackle now, a potential right tackle of the future, amongst all the other candidates. So here we are in round 4. Here's your first page.
Okay. I like Wooden, but we're not going to go back with the end. I like Saldiveri in the next round, although we just went tackle. Zach Evans is still there.
He definitely is.
He's definitely still there.
Yep.
Yeah, I could take Chase Brown at the spot for sure. and be happy with it. I could take Zach Kuntz. Those are going to be the two highest guys on my board, more than likely. Are going to be now. We're going to have to debate, what do we value more? What do we want more here? We've got Brown, who is, again, speed, highly athletic, more of a finesse runner, good receiver as well. Used a lot at Illinois. I mean, the man has been, if he rolls into the shop with a flat tire, there's a reason why. There might be not a lot of tread left on those things. But I still really like him. And I still think he would fit this offense very well. Doesn't mean he's an RB1 in the future. We're in the 4th round. We're just looking for a impact RB2 type guy that would flow well and provide some explosive plays, right? I mean, that's what he does. On the other hand, Zach Kuntz being the other guy at tight end, because I have him over Davis Allen, who ran a 4.8. I mean, you're just not going to get a tight end 1 out of a guy who runs 4.8. But Davis Allen's tape is good. He's going to be a good number 2 tight end in his career, no doubt about it. Zach Kuntz, though, is Mike Gesicki in the 4th round, right? He actually went to Penn State before transferring to Old Dominion. He's tall. He's real linear. He's fast. He gets downfield. He's got great ball skills, catches away from his body, natural receiver, clunky in and out because he's so long and lanky. Doesn't really block well, doesn't really run after the catch well. Those tall guys, they're easy to tackle, right? It's just, you'd rather be the low center mass guy. The best guy after the catch tight end in this class is one of the shortest guys in Sam Laporta, and it's, makes sense to me. I like the upside of Kuntz. I think he can be a tight end 1. Is that worth more than trying to go for a running back that one of the last few speed guys that can play or touch the ball 200 times in an offense this year? What's more important to you, Willie? I'd like your input here. Where would you rather go? Because if we're not going Evans, would we go Deuce Vaughn? Would we go Chase Brown? Would we go Zach Kuntz?
I mean, you're kind of getting into this spot where it's not that body type that really jumps out to you with the Bengals in a lot of ways. I mean, this would normally be, and you're getting later in the draft. I mean, we're on day 3 now. This is where you can kind of start to bet on individual traits as opposed to the full package. But
for sure,
man, if I'm staring down this draft board and I'm looking for more boxes to check, Zach Kuntz just checks more boxes in an area of need. And especially if I'm looking for a longer term starter. And I love the way you put it with Chase Brown. I mean, even down the stretch, or I think I'm thinking of Sean Tucker, but I just feel like Chase Brown at Illinois, it just felt like he was always there. I watch a lot of Big Ten football as an Ohio State fan, and I've heard the name Chase Brown more times than I can probably remember at this point. But to me, that kind of just makes it a tough sell for me. And I think you and I both know, and this isn't like breaking news, but the Bengals value guys that don't have a billion carries entering the NFL. So for me, I think on this board, I'm probably going Zach Kuntz. And again, the Davis Allen thing, he's not going to be a tight end 1, so I can't go that direction at tight end either.
Now, for whatever reason, my eyes blurred right over Keaton Mitchell, so we should probably talk about him real fast.
Oh, yeah. Burner.
Yeah, 5'8", 180. So he's small, probably smaller than you'd like at the running back position. But you can use him as a receiver. He's an explosive. He's a bomb waiting to happen. He's a long play at any moment. Has the same stride type thing of the guys from ECU past, of Chris Johnson. And, he was highly productive. And I could see that pick. You're not getting an RB1 again, but you're getting a guy that can contribute in a pass-heavy offense that, hey, against the Chiefs, when they're doubling your 2 outside receivers and nobody else can get open, Keaton Mitchell's going to get open and address one of these guys and scare you because he's going to run after the catch. I also think Zach Kuntz would be the way I go as well. I think he has the potential to be a tight end 1, which is where I'd still like to play in the 4th round.
And talking about Penn State tight ends, I mean, at this point, it seems like there's becoming a bit of a proven track record. I mean, he obviously transferred to Old Dominion, but to me, that is something. Like, here's Big Ten Willie again doing his Big Ten thing. But it feels like under James Frank, Big Ten Willie, I got to be careful because no one wants to hear me talk about the Big Ten. I do this way too often. Anyway.
Is that what they called you in college, Big Ten Willie?
Yeah, it just seems like everyone on Twitter wants to light me up because I'm always hyping up the Big Ten. Always in the mentions. They don't like when I do the Ohio State thing. They don't like when I like all the Michigan guys. They don't like it. So I got to be careful, man. Don't want to make them too mad out there. So we went with Zach Kuntz. But I was going to say, what do you think about – I mean, does it say anything to you when programs produce a certain type of player? Because
it does.
Pat Freiermuth and Mike Gesicki are obviously huge success stories from that program. Brenton Strange is going to be a guy that PFF has lower on the board, but obviously a Penn State product as well. So
I think Brenton Strange is Dawson Knox. Like, I think he's going to be that type of tight end. I think he's going to develop into a starter. I would take him in the 4th round, no problem. If he was the best tight end left, I'd say, okay, let's go.
Right on.
But yes, to answer your question,
go ahead. Yeah,
Iowa, Penn State. Yes, there are. When you find, especially when the coaches have been there for a while now, because then the pipeline is established. They're looking for a certain type of player. They're recruiting a certain type of player. They know what traits they like. It's the same things we talk about the Bengals in drafting receivers right now. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for so long. Duke Tobin's been there for 20-something years. They know what they like. They can correct the mistakes that happen along the way and keep it moving. I think college programs have success. I don't say scout the helmet because you still got to watch the guy to make sure he's still good. But it just so happens very often that the Iowa tight end, again, is good because they know what they're doing. So same thing with Penn State lately. It seems like they know what they're looking for, at least finding athletes at that position.
I totally agree. And we've once again skipped on running back. And the helmet scouting thing, I think that I feel like every time anyone talks about it, they say this, but it matters to an extent. You can't rely on it, but these programs, man, they produce a certain type of player. And I know that there's a lot of stereotypes about this program can't produce that type of player and all that kind of stuff too. So that stigma works both ways.
It's true until it isn't true anymore. So like, it's okay to say like Ohio State quarterbacks don't work out until one does, and you'll be the guy that missed on them. Well, guess what? You should have did your homework and actually watch the player.
That's a hell of a point. And I think that Ohio State fans watching this show, which I think we have some in here. I think I recognize some of these names. Can definitely appreciate.
Nick Sullivan, is this new or is this? Are we on the 5th round?
This is the same thing. I'm just going back. I was going to ask you about one of these players.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember which one I wanted to ask you about. Okay, I think I know who I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
Keandre Coburn. I mean, is that a name that if the Bengals don't go, I don't know, defense to start this thing, do you start to think about a guy like that? And is that the kind of player you think the Bengals target? I mean, they met with him at the Combine, big bodied Texas interior guy. I think he's a name that I think about a lot when I get into this, 4th round of the PFF mock. What do you think about that player in particular before we move on? Because that's just someone I really like.
Yeah, he's a lot. He reminds me of BJ Hill, where he had the nose tackle type body and even a nose tackle type demeanor in the way he defends the run. You wish he was more explosive. I think he is going to be a nose tackle, even though he's 6'1", 330. He had enough high-end flashes of pass rush and run defense. I think he's decently rated high on PFF's. 24% true pass rush win rate, which is above average. 15.4% pass rush win rate, which is, again, above average. He can rush the passer from a nose tackle spot. So he's kind of a tweener. I think he's going to end up in a very similar situation to BJ Hill, because this was also, if you remember, Hill coming out of NC State, was a very similar profile that read the same way. And I think Hill struggled with the Giants figuring out what he couldn't do. He could definitely rush the passer, but you look like a nose tackle. So what do? The Bengals figured it out and found a way to use him. So I could see that being a very similar player that they felt comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is an exciting thing about this team is they do find defensive players and find ways to use them. A credit to Lou Anarumo and a credit to kind of Duke Tobin and everyone. Not to do the whole Bengals homer show today, even though, same old Stripes has never had a problem doing it. I'm just going to put one more slide together here for R5. Yeah, let's do
okay. Hoping for running back. Come on. Leave someone there for us.
Interesting options. They're starting to fall a little bit. You're not going to have the same options you might have wanted to have.
Joe Mixon's on the team, then. It is what it is.
Yeah, you're probably going to be retaining Joe Mixon at this point, just realistically looking at the guys on the list. There's still some guys that I know you really like just based on some of your tweets. But
yeah, I'm going to pull up my running back sheet again because now we're getting deeper down.
Yep. And again, I can list off some more running backs that are remaining, but honestly, I think the ones that are on the list are going to be the ones you want to go with because we're getting down to slim pickings here in round 5.
Great. Happy to see Keaton Mitchell still there on this page.
Yep, that's what I think that you got that going for you.
Yep.
Stetson Bennett's there for everyone let's get Stetson going.
Do you want to take a safety to round that room out? Because Tyler Lacey, the Bengals met with. I have him as a defensive tackle. It's funny they got him listed as an edge here.
Yeah, I think he's more commonly listed as a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Some of these just aren't super up to date.
Another page. Okay, so Josh Wiley, say we would have went without, or we went running back last time and then come back here and taken a Wiley. I could have seen that scenario playing out. Kenny McIntosh is a good passing game back, probably fits this offense better than a lot of guys. He's probably if you were ranked passing game backs that are ready to play right now, Bijan Robinson, I think Roschon Johnson can fit that. I think Charbonnet can do it. He's got good hands and pass protected enough, or at least had to do enough reading. I think after that, it gets pretty slim until you get to Kenny McIntosh again, who did a lot of pass blocking, a lot of receiving. He fits. Again, are we looking for a guy that has higher upside? Because to me, I think Keaton Mitchell definitely does. He provides some explosiveness, the opportunity for long plays, which I think Keaton Mitchell had the most explosive runs in college football last year, if I remember on a percentage basis. Yeah. Like that's what I want. If I had to describe what the running game's missing and what the offense is missing to combat the cover two shells, I would have said an explosive back that can make guys miss and rip off long runs and be a receiver. Like that's Keaton Mitchell. That's where I'm sitting right now.
So right now you're sitting Keaton Mitchell. I'm going to read off the rest of these, at least some of these running back names that are still kind of in the Bengals range. There's only about 3 left that I think we'd really consider draftable, and especially guys that we'd even be talking about in the 5th round.
Okay.
Evan Hull from Northwestern, Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky, and a guy who's been really banged up and had a lot of miles on him already is Muhammad Ibrahim from Minnesota, but very interesting tape. I just wanted to throw those names out there based on what we know now, and I'll just kind of flip through these for everyone's knowledge. Again, to answer a question in the comments, Roschon Johnson went in the 3rd, and Tajay Spears, I think, went in the 2nd round, 2nd or 3rd. Roschon or Tajay Spears went relatively early. He's trending upward in a lot of these mock drafts across the board. So, Joe.
Yes.
Your round 5 pick.
Yes. So on tape, I'm looking at my tape grades for these running backs. The 2 highest on tape I have remaining are Keaton Mitchell and a guy I think of runs and looks a lot like Joe Mixon, but with 4.4 speed is Deneric Prince. He's probably lower here and probably going to be like a 6th, 7th or undrafted guy, but the Bengals running back coach also coached him as well. So I think that could be a pairing if it gets to that opportunity. Maybe this is the scenario, right? Yeah. Where they want a bigger back and they wait. The guy who grades out the highest, saying he's probably going to end up being a fine player, safest prospect, is Evan Hull. He was used a lot at Northwestern. I think he looks like discount Austin Eckler. And this class reminds me of that 2017 class, that Joe Mixon class, where guys were drafted all the way throughout. Aaron Jones being a day 3 pick, being a stud, and then Austin Eckler is an undrafted guy. I could see this class rolling out a lot of contributors at running back positions in the same way. Still, though, for what I think this team needs, I think Keaton Mitchell would be awesome to add to this offense just for the home run threat ability and something, even if you like Travion Williams, even if you want to keep Joe Mixon for a year, which I think this pairing matches up well with, Keaton Mitchell adds something that those guys don't have.
I really like that pick. And you know what? I think it kind of, and it's very different in terms of, stylistic players, but it does give them a different flavor in the way, when they drafted Giovanni Bernard, it was a very different flavor in a different direction than they've gone, at running back for a long time. In a scenario like this, and I think you might already set it up top, but you're definitely keeping Joe Mixon at this point, right?
Yeah, you have to. I think that's the reason. I said this after free agency, right? After the few guys I was interested in went off the board, signed with other teams. I'm like, well, the ball's in Mixon's court at this point. I don't know if they've approached him about a pay cut. I don't know if they've approached him about, hey, we could potentially release you if we sign this, that guy. But now the leverage is in Mixon's camp. And so the Bengals are probably like, okay, we'll head the draft. If we get a guy in round 2, guess what? The ball's back in the Bengals court at that point, where it's like, hey, you don't really have leverage over them. You might as well take a pay cut and just be on the roster because you're going to make less money more than likely if they cut you and you head out to free agency. So I think in that scenario, the Bengals go to the draft. If they get their guy, great, ball's in their court. If not, if they got to go all the way to the 5th round, you get Keaton Mitchell. Well, now the ball's back in Joe Mixon's court, or stays there, of like, guys, you're going to have to pay me my $12 million, because what are you going to let Keaton Mitchell and Travion Williams and Chris Evans run the ball? They're not going to do that. So at this point, you hope to find a solution that works for both parties, and maybe that's still a pay cut, but at the end of the day, I don't think they cut him at all in this scenario.
I think that's very interesting to weigh at this point. And it shows the sliding doors in this draft again. If you don't go running back early, I mean, it doesn't hurt to keep him around. He's still very productive, and we all know in the back half of the year, especially when they switched to that gap running scheme, looked a hell of a lot better.
Oh yeah.
You're still missing what you got from Samaje Perine in this case. You still don't have that pass blocker, but maybe Trey Williams becomes that guy.
And I would approach Mixon about being that guy, to be honest with you. Hey, for the first time in your career, you don't have Giovanni Bernard and Samaje Perine in that room with you. You are the veteran. You are the guy that's got to lead this unit, and we need you to pass block. We need you to be the best version of Oklahoma Joe Mixon possible, which is the reason he was a top 10 player on a lot of people's boards that year. Only reason he was knocked was because of his off-the-field incident. The reason people loved him is because he was supposed to be a weapon as a receiver. And last year was the first year we got to even see a taste of it, where he looked like an actual contributor in the passing game. The other part is just being able to be trusted as a blocker. And I think they could find a way to meet halfway there also and say, listen, we need you to be that guy that's on the field in the AFC Championship game on that last drive in the Super Bowl. We need you on the field because we need you to be our third down and red zone and 2-minute back.
And I think that it would be kind of a nice story for a lot of different reasons. And, maybe it still is in the tank. I mean, Joe Mixon's been around this team for a long time. There's still clearly a lot of love for him in that locker room and in the front office and around the organization. I don't think any of that's gone.
No,
I don't. Yeah, so I think as long as that's there, I mean, there's going to be a spot for him on this team. And, you talk to a guy like Dave Lapham and hear him talk, he still really likes Joe Mixon and gets the feeling that he's really liked in that building. So until we hear otherwise, I mean, like Katie Blackburn said, he's on the team, and it'll remain that way. And the Bengals are picking a running back in round 5, I'm sure. So I'm getting round 6 pulled up. I've got 5 slides of these this time for you because in round 6 we're really entering the it's traits based now. It's you like one trait, you like that guy, you're more than welcome to pick him. And a lot of these.
This is the area the Bengals have struggled recently. We haven't gotten these guys on rounds 5, 6, 7 that have really been able to come in and, think about it. Jake Lisco was talking about this earlier on Twitter. And they had Volson last year in the 4th round, but imagine if they could really boost up how they're drafting on day 3. If you could hit a TJ Hushmanzada in the 7th, if you could hit a Geno Atkins, I mean, these are high-end hopes, but if you did that on the current roster, how much better would this team get if you could just hit one of these day 3 picks out of the park? They really haven't had that in a long time now.
And we're being day 6 now. I totally agree. It's time to start hitting on some of these later day guys. And, those are the guys that, end up, kind of changing the game for a lot of these teams, especially in contention windows. I mean, look at a team like the Rams when they were all in. They had a lot of those guys deep into the roster stepping up.
Yeah.
Or even a guy like the Bengals just picked up in Nick Scott.
Yep.
7th round pick, if I'm correct. And obviously became a key contributor on that Super Bowl team. Here we are in round 6. Definitely still some names I like on the board. Jordan McFadden's on the board. But, Joe, I'm going to flip through these for you.
Can we put Stetson Bennett at slot receiver?
I mean,
did I throw you off that much?
Yeah, I could picture it in my head for some reason. I was like, you know what? I've heard crazier things. So slot receiver Stetson Bennett's on the board. Slide 2. Evan Hull, our good friend, back on the board, but we have a running back.
I would take both the guys at the bottom here, and Desjuan Johnson and Brett Nyland.
The Bengals have met with Desjuan Johnson 2 times already, by the way.
Yeah, he is an upfield penetrating 3-tech. I think he's just a little bit older. I want to say he's going to be 24 as a rookie, but I mean, that's how you end up as a late pick. But I mean, he provides something in that defensive tackle room that I don't think they have with that upfield burst. He looks like a poor man's Ogunjobi.
I think Bengals fans would take a poor man's Ogunjobi. It's been a while since I said that name.
I know, right?
In the rotation. I used to be so good at it. Oh, well, here we go. Larry Ogunjobi, mind you, another late round small school pick that blossomed into something so interesting up there, but obviously he came from Cleveland.
Yeah.
So we go.
Okay, 2 guys on this list that I would consider. I'd add a power back to go with Keaton Mitchell. I wouldn't be afraid on doubling up at that position. Chris Rodriguez, he's had a lot of wear and tear, but at the same time, he is a definition of an under center. There's a few of these guys that can still run from under center, power zone. And he hit some home runs too for being a big back play. He'll be that hammer if you want to pair him with Keaton Mitchell and really start to turn over this running back room. Even if you're just keeping Mixon for one more year, man, you could go into next year with two guys that, fit, or maybe thunder and lightning type of deal.
Yeah. I think that'd be a nice, and honestly, I think the doubling up on running back is becoming increasingly popular as a Bengals thing. It'll be fascinating to see if they're continuing that trend on the double up, moving on to the running back position. Obviously, they had the famous triple up at linebacker a few years ago. So that'd be interesting. So we have slide 4 here.
Another guy on that is for the previous slide that I just want to make sure I had it correct.
Yeah.
Javarius Owens, the safety out of Houston. I wanted to be sure here. He is on our spreadsheet 1, 3, 4, 5th, number 5 safety. So from the still be available here, he checks a lot of boxes, and it would be a similar situation last year where they've got a 3rd round grade on Tyson Anderson. He's there in the 5th round. They're like, screw it, we'll double up at that position and take the guy. Here's a situation where you could say he's probably a 3rd round pick. He's still there. Late into the day 3, we can, draft a guy that's going to be depth, special teams, but someone you think has a better chance of succeeding than some of these other guys.
There's a name for you to circle, Bengals fans. Did it for you. Cameron Brown, there he is. Multiple meetings with the Bengals as well. Not my favorite Ohio State Buckeye ever. The name I really like on this list, not to jump in front of you, but Jake Bobo is a guy that keeps popping up on some highlights for me. Kind of interesting, and a spot where I would not be uncomfortable taking a wide receiver. And you can take Stetson Bennett to play your slot receiver. I have no problem with that. But there's your slide 4.
Yeah, so Bobo, last year when we were watching Dulcich, showed up a couple times. And then this year watching Charbonnet and Mafi and Gaines on the offensive line, Bobo kept making plays. He's 25 years old, or he'll be 25 very shortly. I think they'll start the season. He'll be that old. Again, that's why you're this late. I assume he goes undrafted. Can you go back to slide 1? Again, it's probably Desjuan Johnson. I'm thinking, was that the first slide? Yeah.
I do have a slide 5 for you too. So if you want to
you do? Fine. All right. Let's see it before we.
Yeah, because I got you one extra slide on this one because I thought the names were pretty interesting and worth taking a look at.
And a few guys they've met with here. Tavius Robinson, they met at edge. We've already filled edge. I want to say BJ Thompson as well. But we've already satisfied that pick. Yeah, I think we can go back and debate on this. Do we want to take a center for the future, which I think the USC guy could be? I think you can get a potential 3 tech that can help you. And we're going heavy D line trenches in general because we got an O line as well. Or do we want to double up at running back? I think you still can in the last round if you wanted to. Evan Hall grades really well. I would like Chris Rodriguez as well, but I do think I could take a guy like Deneric Prince in the 7th and be just as happy. Also, I think Desjuan makes the most sense here.
So let's go ahead and slam home our good friend Desjuan from the MAC conference, which will make the MAC purists like me pretty happy.
2 Toledo guys in back-to-back years, though. They getting the scoop, right? They getting the scoop from Tyson Anderson. They're like, "Oh, this guy couldn't be blocked, man."
They were all over Tyson Anderson. So there's something in that Toledo defense. I think their coach is Jason Kindle. I don't want to be wrong, but very good reputation for his program up there. Here we go, doing the MAC thing again. I hate when I do this for you guys, but I also love it for you because you get to hear the MAC nerd out. I could pull up 7th round picks for you, Joe. I could.
You could, but what? What are you saying?
The comments really want us to go with Oklahoma punter.
Michael Turk.
Michael Turk. So I'm going to ask you, would you be good going Michael Turk in the 7th round? And then I want you to give us your sell on this guy because apparently people love him. And I've seen you kind of throwing his name out there a little bit more.
Yeah, he and Behringer. I'd be happy with either guy, but all the data says Turk is better at everything. But Behringer's fun as well. I think I'd be happy with either punter, to be honest. Probably because I'm super thirsty for a punter. A quote, words I've never said. I think the punter thirst is real. Honestly, I think Drew Chrisman lost that final minute in the Chiefs game. And for as much as we like the guy for being a local guy and all that stuff, but you can't punt down the middle on a line drive. with the game on the line. You just cannot do it. For all the clutch plays this team has made over 2 years, has to be maybe that's as bad as Adeniji and Joseph Osai in their moments at the end. I mean, your final plays on the 3 phases of the game are sack, personal foul, guy out of bounds, and just straight up punting a ball straight down the middle. And he didn't miss. If you know anything about punting, his feet are aligned pre-snap where he's going to punt it, and he meant to punt it down the middle. It's like, it's insane to me that even happened. And I can go on a rant, and you got me very close, Willie, to doing that. I'm going to reel it in and say, I have no problem. If you want to take Michael Turk here and spend a 7th-round pick, I got no problem with that. Your chances of hitting a starter for special teams on day 3 is like 38%. You're not getting a starter in any other position at 38%. You might be rolling a dice up at like 6, 7, 8%.
So there we have it. I'm going to go Michael Turk for everyone's sanity because I think we're trying to save Joe Goodberry's heart for all of us. We want him to be as possible. I don't think we can take any more Drew Christmas. Even if he didn't want to go punter, I'm going to save him from himself. I have the grade. I have it available. I'm
sending out a tweet for Bengals on the brain real fast. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good.
I got to get it out before 8 o'clock, and we're 2 minutes away.
Yeah. What grade do you guys think Joe Goodberry got on his draft? Just real fast.
B.
And then Joe, what grade do you think they give? You think they gave you a B?
Yeah, I think they were negative on Derek Hall, but I think generally they probably would like the rest.
Well, let's take a look right now. Your immediate assumption is right. They didn't like you all the way to B, though. They didn't let you get the full clean B. So
well, they don't know shit anyways over at PFF anyway. So what are they really?
Yeah, tell them. No,
B minus.
We're not that kind of podcast. No one's getting smarter watching this, except the people. Oh, I guess people are listening to you getting smarter. But normally, this is an uneducational podcast. I forgot that we have an educational person on the show today.
Sure.
There you have it. Here's your grades. I think the Michael Turk grade is probably wrong. It should be an A++ because we saved Joe Goodberry's life. But not a lot of A's, but I think it's pretty solid overall. I think that a lot of Bengals fans are going to be not upset with this draft class.
PFF has good grades on Derek Hall. Just for whatever reason, they've got him ranked 89th. So that's why that gets, graded. Honestly, my least favorite pick is Wanya Morris. I almost feel like I was too pressured into getting an offensive tackle because the mob's going to come for you at that point. If you go defense, they're going to be like, you need offensive line and freak out and storm Paul Brown Stadium or Paycor Stadium now. But there weren't great options there. At that 3rd round, I would rather move up or down. If you simulate it and you get that 9 out of 10 times, I don't want to sit there. I don't like that spot. I don't think it lines up at all for what the Bengals need. You're either moving up, moving back, collecting more picks, which I wouldn't be against at all.
Yeah, and just to wrap it up, I think that is a perfect trade back spot and a spot where the Bengals have traded back in the past and had a lot of, kind of in that 3rd round range. They don't mind trading back there at all, those mid-round picks. Well, Joe, you've been an awesome guest on today's show. Thanks for doing this project with me, man. This was a lot of fun, and make sure you guys tune into Bengals on the Brain because he's going to do a great breakdown for all you guys.
Yeah, we got videos on Forbes and Hall. So, if you have any reservations, you're going to know at the end of that one.
Yeah. Well, right on, man. Have a great night. And Houday, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Anytime, Willie.